Hello, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming in today on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm just delighted this morning to welcome my guest, Lori Towle is here. She has a doctorate in educational leadership and more than 22 years of teaching and administrative experience in K-12 public and private schools. Currently, she's the executive director of Code&Circuit, an Amesbury-based computer science school for kids, where all ages can learn, create, and problem solve in the fields of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, commonly known as STEAM. So, Lori, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking time to visit the morning show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to learn more about Code&Circuit, so let's dig in. First of all, what inspired you to join Code&Circuit and why focus on STEAM?
Sure. So my desire to join Code&Circuit began back in 2014 when Ken was just designing Code&Circuit. So Ken is the founder, and he had a vision of offering computer science opportunities for kids. Simultaneously, through my business, Full Circle Classrooms, I had started a micro school, which was all project-based learning. So from 2014 on, we partnered, and my students would come to Code&Circuit, where we would facilitate opportunities for kids to learn about robotics and coding at the K-8 level.
Oh, that's great, Lori. And you know, I believe that Code&Circuit partners with schools as well as offering classes on site in your location. Tell us a little bit about that partnership. How do you work with schools and what makes that important to you?
Sure. So the outreach to schools started last spring when Ken hired me on as the executive director. And with my background in education and in the learner-centered paradigm, I reached out to schools with the hopes of partnering with schools, and Ken had also donated Spot the Robotic Dog. So I took my passion, which is reaching each learner and incorporating social emotional learning with robotics and coding, and began partnering with schools last spring. So that has developed into day-long programs where I go out into schools with Spot, with other technology, and engage students in both small groups as small as 5 and large groups as large as 300 students at a time, with a combination of learning about technology and the future of technology and robotics, and also incorporating some social emotional learning into the process. So that's where we started. One of my passions is equity to access. So what I also did is pursue some grants so that we could bring this, what I call techquity, into schools where there's underserved populations. So that outreach began with some local grants, including Newburyport Bank, and then we just partnered with top-notch scholars in Lawrence and received a $100,000 grant to go into Lawrence public schools next year to provide them with technology and working with Code&Circuit as well as top-notch scholars.
Well, congratulations, first off, on the grant, and also congratulations on the brilliance of the concept and the execution of techquity, which is a great word. It kind of summarizes it all. So that's really wonderful, and it means that you can provide these opportunities to children who might not otherwise have access to STEAM. And that's just wonderful and brilliant. I'm glad to hear you're doing it. I'm curious to find out, how do children respond to the opportunities to learn about robotics and technology? Can you give us an example or two of what captivates them and what kind of responses you witness?
Of course. You know, here at Code&Circuit, I think one of the things that really stands out is that we're able to reach a neurodiverse population of learners. And so when they come in, we're not trying to make them fit inside a box. We see their interests. They are then able to dive into that interest. And what captivates them is the fact that it's not teacher-led, it's student-driven. So when they have questions, when they want to explore, we facilitate that. So that level of engagement and that spark ignites, because if they're working with a robot, for example, or if they're working on coding and they have a specific interest they want to incorporate, we can guide them in that, which then increases the engagement and the motivation to learn and to really explore.
That's just a wonderful idea. I mean, because to me, Lori, it sounds like what you're doing is you begin with each individual student's curiosity. And then instead of trying to compartmentalize it to fit some externally imposed curriculum, you build the curriculum based on their curiosity as it engages and grows. And that strikes me as a recipe for a lifelong learner, which I think we need more of. So school will be exciting, and school will be joyful. And that just sounds really wonderful, Lori, just absolutely transformative.
Yes, so when I do go into schools, after I engage the students in a whole group presentation to learn more about Spot and how Spot, the robot, works, they actually have the opportunity to navigate and try different centers based on their interests. So it brings out that whole idea of the student-led piece. So rather than having than adults guiding them through centers, they choose what's their interest. Is it coding? Is it robotics? Is it circuitry? And then they can navigate accordingly.
Well, now you've mentioned your sidekick, Spot. Is it possible for us to meet Spot?
Absolutely.
Spot there?
Absolutely. So I can have Spot walk over and say hi. Just 1 second.
Oh my gosh, there's Spot. Oh, Lori. Hi, Spot.
Here we have Spot, and as you can see, Spot, obviously captures the audience's attention and is very unique in how it's able to be worked with children of all ages.
Yes,
so we have older students who are coding Spot, and we have younger students who are learning about how a robot is made, how it's similar and dissimilar from humans. And Spot is really a unique addition to what we can offer at Code&Circuit.
Spot is an amazing creature. And for anyone listening on the radio, you might want to tune into the video on YouTube so you can see Spot. But Spot looks like a robotic dog. Spot stands up and makes a play bow. If Scott were a dog, I would describe that as a play bow, Lori, and can do tricks, more tricks than my dog.
Yes.
So Lori, gosh, I mean, how do kids respond to Spot?
So the response is very interesting. First, they're very excited and wow, seeing something like this in person, when normally they might just see it on a YouTube video or on a commercial. So that opportunity to engage with Spot and learn more about robots and technology is really exciting for them. And so that comes out with their curiosity. They ask so many questions, and we're able to really provide that platform where they can ask as many questions as they have. And then that inspires them to think, wow, maybe this is something that I could get into.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Now, Lori, I think I read that you sometimes take Spot out on the street with you.
Yes.
And so what kind of response do you get from passersby?
It's interesting. Humans normally respond with a little bit of a shocked look at what's coming down the street, and dogs have varying responses.
Some I bet.
Want to come right up and see what's going on with Spot. Other dogs immediately bark. And so it's very interesting. I think everyone's response is unique, And we just try to honor their comfort levels when we do
Sure.
see Spot.
Sure. Well, Spot is clearly I'm engaged. And I'm sure that you get a variety of responses. But what a wonderful way to engage people's curiosity, especially kids. And as you say, then to let them ask whatever questions they have, and then to respond to those particular questions with answers that will help them figure out what's their next question and the next question
Yes.
after that. And I
Yes.
imagine it winds up for some of the kids about, how can I make one?
Exactly. And coming out of the pandemic, Ken's thought was, he very generously donated Spot to Code&Circuit, his company. And, his thought was, how can we re-inspire that love of learning? How can we, reignite that passion? And so, Spot has really added a lot to student experiences, both here and at schools and out in the community.
Wonderful. And it makes the potentials of STEAM learning tangible to children.
Yes.
So I can learn more about things like Spot, and maybe I can make a Spot or Spot 0.2 or Spot 0.3. Maybe I can train Spot to do the dishes, take out the trash. So anyway, thank you for introducing us to Spot. What a great sidekick to have.
Absolutely.
Farewell, Spot. Well, Lori, I wanted to ask you, I know that you founded a consulting branch called Full Circle Classrooms to advise educators about best practices in creating positive school climates, something we're certainly in need of. Could you tell us a little bit about what some of those best practices are? I know you've mentioned a couple of things that I know are dear to you, like student-centered learning and social emotional learning. Those are things we hear about, but I think many of us may not know exactly what they mean.
Sure. Yeah, so I founded Full Circle Classrooms in 2012. And at the time, I was fielding a lot of phone calls from families in the Newburyport area where their children in various grade levels were struggling with different aspects of schooling. And myself personally, I grew up going to public schools, and I then was exposed to private schools and noticed that I felt that every student should have the ability and the landscape for learning in a learner-centered environment. So I was then really devoted to bringing this learner-centered paradigm into public school education. So when I founded Full Circle Classrooms, I spent a lot of time with learning in the brain, volunteered at Gabrielli Lab at MIT to really look at how the brain works in children, how it works with different types of learners with ADHD, learners with dyslexia. And then I also worked a lot with social emotional learning and using the classroom as a third teacher, and how can we make every experience personalized for students, which is what I feel it should be. So my business is really helping educators and school leaders make a paradigm shift to the learner-centered paradigm. So I've been contracted with Boston Public Schools and with Haverhill Schools, and what I do is I work with educators and help them with project-based learning, which provides a level of connection and a level of personalization where the educators are partnering with students rather than teaching and regurgitating. So it's really hands-on and it's more engaging for the students.
Sure.
So the goal overall, which is why I'm so aligned with Code&Circuit, is to have learning be child-centered.
Yeah.
So the work that I do, whether I'm presenting nationally or internationally or locally or working with schools, is to guide educators in changing the question for students, how smart are you, to how are you smart, and embracing their strengths, and then incorporating culturally responsive teaching, which is something that I also have been very passionate about, helping educators take an equity pause, Is there equity to access? Are personal circumstances being taken into consideration? Are there different ways of looking at how we can help instill a growth mindset in students? So that's been my passion.
Well, and what a wonderful passion to have, because you're really bringing the principles of democracy and equality to the field of education, which has been, fair to say, more hierarchy based, I think, in the past.
Sure.
And I love the question, how are you smart? Because it's so affirming that every child has a different form of intelligence.
Yes.
And so it's really bringing, I think it's Howard Gardner who introduced the idea of multiple intelligences. It's really bringing that into the level of everyday life in the classroom, which is just extraordinary and wonderful. I'm glad you're out there doing this. So, well, I know, Lori, it's clear from talking to you that your interest and your devotion really to education are deep and wide ranging. And I hope you might also say a little bit about a couple of volunteer engagements I read about that you participate in. One is an organization called Education Reimagined, which is such a captivating name. And you've already been, I think, describing a new paradigm. But maybe you could say a little bit more about what else might be being reimagined for education in general.
Sure. Yes. So Education Reimagined is a nonprofit, and it's a national organization that has really looked at how can we guide transformation in public education so that every learner is embraced for who they are.
Yeah.
Every child deserves a special education, something that they can be proud of, something that they feel engaged and motivated to continue. So I started working with that organization, and then got involved with XQ Super School, which was a national movement to rethink high school. So I developed a team. Ken and his wife, Rachel, who designed this space, were also on the team, but a team of 12 individuals from all over the country, including Rod Reardon from High Tech High, which is one of the most learner-centered public school systems in the country. And we really devoted a year and a half to rethinking high school. And now there's XQ Super Schools all over the country that are really looking at how can we make this meaningful? How can we make it relevant? How can we shift the content so that the students have some sense of ownership and empowerment in the process, K through 12? So that's another organization that I worked with. And as I mentioned, the Gabrielli Lab was a volunteer experience where I went into MIT and volunteered to help with these studies that are really looking at the brain and the child's brain. And how does anxiety impact learning? How does ADHD, what are the changes we see? And I think that has helped inform me, myself as a lifelong learner. I'm always looking for opportunities where I can connect and help education move forward.
Well, that sounds just really wonderful and so important because, of course, people's brains are different, just as our personalities are different and our backgrounds and upbringing, socioeconomic levels are different. And so you're factoring in, I know earlier you used the phrase neurodiverse. So you're factoring neurodiversity in to how you can make learning student-centered. And that just strikes me as truly transformative, Lori. It's exciting to hear about. Now, I also read something about a deeper learning pilot program. That phrase got my curiosity going as well. So I think that's a Massachusetts Department of Education pilot, if I read, so tell us a little bit about just the phrase deeper learning got me interested. So what's that about?
So that pilot program occurred last year, and really the focus was how can we, of course, we know that we want to engage students on a deeper level, but what does that mean? And that related directly to what I was doing my dissertation on, which was professional learning communities in schools. So this deeper learning pilot program looked at how can professional learning be guided in a way so that we're looking at student work, and we're looking at curriculum in a way that is meaningful and equitable for the students. So it was really fascinating the way that we looked at things. Basically, it would set up this framework where you're looking at what does equity mean? What is my personal bias when I'm developing curriculum? Everybody that was a part of this cohort was then looking at how could professional learning communities become learner-centered?
Right.
And that relates specifically to professional development in schools.
Yeah.
Similar to schools where you go into the classroom and it's a one-size-fits-all first grade math lesson or a one-size-fits-all algebra lesson. Schools have been using one-size-fits-all professional development for educators.
Yeah.
But we know that everyone learns differently. We have neurodiverse staff members, just as we have neurodiversity in the classroom. So how can professional development be personalized, and how can professional learning communities be established in order to really boost that cultural relevancy, equity in the classroom? And so it looks at, it's not just about the students and the curriculum, it's about how can we develop this deeper learning with our staff members.
Yeah. It's about all the human beings who are part of education.
Yes, all the stakeholders.
Yes, that's right, which is just transformative. Again, because of course, teachers are humans too, and they have neurodiversity. And so as you put it beautifully to talk about bringing the teachers when they're in professional development are students too. And so let's make it student-centered for them as well. So
Yes,
it brings a consistency and a coherence. And when you do that for teachers, they're much more likely, it would strike me, to be able to activate and manifest true student-centered learning when they've had access to the same opportunities themselves.
Yes.
So that's really wonderful, Lori. Well,
Yes.
Lori, I spent some time looking through Code&Circuit's online list of classes, which was really fun. I was just struck by how much fun it sounded, and also the way that you find topics that will engage children of all ages and meet them where their interests are. So I've just got to ask you about some of the classes I saw listed. So could you tell us what happens in the marble races?
Oh, absolutely. So, we, as you mentioned, we are a STEAM organization, a STEAM nonprofit. So science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And so this was really based on the engineering piece. But what I do with the younger students is incorporate math and literacy. So they're learning about the physics of roller coasters through various engaging activities with marble racing, where they're actually going through the engineering design process. They're on paper, and then they're building their own models, and then they're putting together models, and then they're seeing a real life model, all geared towards inspiring them with, they can be an engineer. They can create, they can, really take what their interests are and explore at a very young age. So that was one of the younger classes that I led over the winter. So, just very engaging for the students to be thinking about how a marble run actually relates to the physics of a roller coaster.
That's wonderful, but also strikes me that is that you're actually having children engage in a form of engineering, and so that every child also gets explicitly and implicitly, you can be an engineer, you can do these things, you are doing them, and I think that's a wonderful message to give children who might tend to hear the word engineering and go, oh, that's hard, or that's difficult, or that's only for technical people, or so I think that's just a way to create a sense of possibilities, and I can do anything that I'm interested in from a very early age. So I know I have to ask you, because I came across a coding scratch studio as a phrase, and I had no idea. I know what coding is, but what's a scratch studio?
Absolutely. So Ken runs the Scratch class that we have right now. And so MIT developed Scratch years ago, and it is a free, it's a free platform for coding using this Scratch as the language. So when Ken works, he has so many students that come through summer sessions, the entire school year with after school classes, and they're actually learning to code using Scratch as the language that they're working with. And so they're learning about many different aspects of coding. There's also Scratch Junior for even younger kids that we do here. But with Ken's Scratch Club, he's able to take any level of prior experience. Beginner, never coded before, up through I've coded with Scratch for 5 years, and they're able to create their own programs and even their own games.
Oh, wow.
That then go on to the Scratch website, and others can learn from their code and create their own programs and games as well.
That sounds really exciting. You know, I don't remember where I read it, but somewhere I read someone was predicting that coding is going to be like learning to read and write. You know, it'll be the basic literacy in the future. And so you're preparing young people to participate in the literacy of the future, or the literacy now, I guess. So that's really exciting.
That's what I think is very empowering for students, is that this digital literacy is key. And when they're able to learn that at their own pace and level, that just keeps them in their zone of proximal learning so that they can move on at the pace that works for them, which is a very powerful model for the classroom as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I also saw a class listed as STEAM Sisters.
Yes.
And I was hoping that you could tell us about the STEAM Sisters.
Sure. You know, over the years since Code&Circuit started, we've been male heavy with our offerings, and a lot of boys come. And so last summer, I decided to offer STEAM Sisters, where it's geared toward females. And in addition to the coding and the robotics and the circuitry, we're starting to offer things that are also very much STEAM aligned, such as digital art, using you know, the Cricut as one of the tools to create. So there's more creativity, light up clothing. There's many different things that we're now incorporating and pulling that draw in for females as well, so that they see that, you know, there's many different offerings that they can pursue here, many different things that they can consider engaging in. So it's just been a nice addition to Code&Circuit to get more females in and interested in.
Absolutely. That's wonderful, Lori. And of course, you're a wonderful role model yourself, doing the work that you do, and, you know, having your own sidekick robot. So that's just really wonderful. And I think just super important to, again, to provide that sense of possibilities for girls as well as boys. Well, Lori, I just have two final questions for you. One of them is your passion is clear for what you do, and your enjoyment of what you do is just ripples off you, which is wonderful. But just, you know, what is it that you enjoy the most about the work you do, and how can people learn more about Code&Circuit and your offerings?
Sure. You know, I would say what I enjoy most is just seeing that light go off in kids, and seeing them inspired then inspires me. Absolutely. So knowing that I'm making a difference in the life of a child and their learning journey is what's super important to me. And to learn more about Code&Circuit and what we offer, our website is codeandcircuit.org. And we also are on Facebook and oftentimes with our social media, we're posting new classes, we're posting what's up and coming. And so going to our website, you can sign up directly from there for our summer sessions. We're also going to be having pop-up workshops, which incorporate rocketry, 3D printing with our new 3D printing center. So lots of offerings, and they're all available right on our website or on our Facebook page.
Wonderful. Lori, I can't thank you enough. It's just very exciting to me to hear you talk about, not only the work you do with STEAM, but the underlying approach that you bring to education, the student-centered learning, the engagement with the curiosity, and letting students educate themselves then really by following their curiosity to where their curiosity wants them to go, and just providing some supports and answers along the way. It strikes me as truly transformative. It is education reimagined, and I'm so glad that you're out there doing this kind of work. Thank you so much for taking time to visit the show, Lori. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Bye now. Do take care.
Bye-bye.